In the white, sun-scorched grasslands of the land of endless sky, where flat-top acacias stand like quiet watchers and the evening wind hums with old songs, there lived a young herder named Kofi. His village, called Aram, lay beside the slow brown waters of the river Lengo, in the heart of the country of Kivili. Kofi rose before the first rooster, when the air still carried the cool breath of night. At 22 reins, he was tall and quick-footed, his skin darkened by years of following cattle across the red earth. Yet something restless moved inside him, like a fish turning under still water. Every night the elders gathered beneath the great wild fig tree and spoke softly of the old laws: pour milk for the ancestors, never cut certain trees, never walk alone beyond the circle of stones. The land has memory, they said. Forget that, and it remembers for you. Kofi only half listened. He had sat in the little school built by travelers from far away, where he learned that rain came from clouds, not from angry spirits, and that big trees were only wood and water. The stories about the giant Baobab that stood alone on the distant plain sounded like tales for children. People called it the tree that speaks. They said the voices of those who had walked before us lived inside its thick trunk. Kofi smiled when he heard this. He believed more in the ribs showing on his cows and the empty rainpots at home than in talking trees. One dry morning, when the grass cracked underfoot like old pottery, Kofi took his long herding stick and turned the cattle west. The sun climbed and burned the back of his neck. Dust rose in small red clouds behind the herd. By the time the sun stood straight overhead, the great Baobab rose before him, grey, swollen, its thin branches lifted to the sky like arms asking for mercy. Kofi tied the cattle to a wait-a-bit thorn bush and walked slowly around the tree. Its bark was deep-cut and rough, like the face of an old man. He laid his palm against it. Nothing happened. He laughed at his own fast-beating heart. Then he saw the opening low down at the base, wide enough for a person to enter. Cool, damp air breathed out of it, carrying the smell of rain even though no rain had fallen for 2 long seasons. Kofi looked back at his thin cattle. If the old stories were even a little true and water was kept inside the tree, his heart could live. He took a deep breath, bent low, and crawled inside. Darkness folded around him. The air felt heavy and sweet, like the inside of a clay pot. Thin spears of sunlight fell through cracks high above. When his eyes grew used to the dimness, he saw pictures carved long ago into the soft wood: running antelope, hunters with bows, circles inside circles that made his head swim. A soft sound began, so soft he thought it was his own blood in his ears. Then it grew into many voices, gentle yet impossible to ignore. Kofi. He stood very still. Kofi, why do you come? The voices were everywhere and nowhere. Cold ran across his skin. You take and take, the voices said, sad more than angry. You do not ask. You do not give back. That is why the grass dies. Kofi wanted to run, but his feet felt rooted. Pictures came into his mind without his eyes seeing them: green seasons long ago, rivers full and shining, children laughing among tall millets, then later seasons when people forgot the old ways, cut too much, thanked too little, and the rivers shrank to cracked mud. His throat closed tight. I only want my cattle to live, he managed to say, and his voice sounded like a child's. A long hush followed. Then the voices spoke again, softer than before. Everything must give something back. Even you. Tears came without warning. He remembered his small sister who had walked into the spirit world when the last great dry time came. He remembered his mother singing to seeds that never answered. Shame sat on his chest like a heavy stone. "I am sorry," he whispered. "I will remember." The air inside the tree moved like a slow, forgiving breath. The voices quieted until they were only wind again. Kofi scrambled out into the blinding daylight. The sun was lower now, and the sky had filled with tall purple clouds that had not been there before. A single cool drop touched his cheek. Then another. Then the heavens opened and rain poured down in shining ropes. The cattle lifted their heads and cawed with full throats. Kofi stood with his arms wide and let the water wash the dust and the pride from his skin. When he walked the herd home that evening, people ran from every hut. The dry riverbed of the Lengo roared with brown water. Children danced. Old women lifted their hands to the sky and gave thanks to the ancestors. Kofi said little at first. But after many moons he began to tell what had happened. He told the children, the young men hungry for new ideas, anyone who would sit and listen. "The land is alive," he said. "It gives us everything. If we take without respect, it hurts. If we listen and give back, it forgives." Years rolled by like slow seasons. Kofi's hair turned white as milk. He still walked to the great tree that speaks from time to time. He carried a small gourd of fresh milk or a handful of first grain and poured it gently at the roots. "Thank you," he always said. "I remember." And deep inside the ancient trunk, the voices rested, quiet and at peace. And so the story of Kofi and the tree that speaks lives on, reminding us to walk gently on the earth and to listen when the old ones speak. Thank you for listening with me today. If you enjoyed this tale from the land of endless sky, please subscribe to the channel and press the little bell so you never miss a new story. And tell me in the comments, which part of the story touched your heart the most? I read every single one. See you in the next story, my friends.